What happens when I can get my job done in 5 minutes or 10 minutes? And then what happens when AI completely replaces me even needing to be there and starting the system? What if my manager can now replace me with a tool that he can tell it what he needs it to do? And I'm no longer in the loop. I'm not needed.
Welcome to the Feria TechCast, where we'll bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. Today, we are joined by Landon Shumway, the author of We Can Be Perfect: Paradox of Progress, novel that explores what happens when AI eliminates human jobs. As a software engineer who has witnessed the tech industry's rapid automation firsthand, he examines both the economic disruption and the deeper question of human purpose in an AI-dominated world. His novel examines not just the challenges of technological unemployment, but the potential solutions that could reshape society for the better. So Landon, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ezekiel, how you doing?
I am doing fine and well. How about you?
Doing great?
Okay, so let's dive in, Landon. You are in a unique position as both a software engineer as a software engineer who uses AI daily, and an author exploring its societal impact. So, what was a specific moment or experience in your technical work that sparked the idea for your book, We Can Be Perfect, and made you feel this story needed to be told?
That's a really great question. And I think what really started it was when I first saw ChatGPT, right? So it came out about almost 3 years ago now. And when I first started using it, I just knew that this was a transformative technology that was going to change the industry. And as a software engineer, I do use it every day. And what's fascinating about it is the amount of work I could get done using this tool is significant. So what used to take me a week to like type stuff out by hand, writing code by hand, using AI, I could get a similar project done in about a day, like an 8 hour shift, which is mind blowing. Never thought I'd see technology like this in my lifetime. And while it's exciting, it also led a question in the back of my mind, which is, well, what happens when it now doesn't take a day, it takes 10 minutes, right? It gets so good that I literally just tell it something, and without any more guidance from me other than the initial thing I needed to do, it just gets it done. And I think this is an interesting challenge because most of us the way we make money is by trading time, right? And I don't know what your situation is, but most people, right, they have like a 9 to 5 or a job where they go for a certain number of hours and they're essentially paid by the hour. And that leads the question, what happens when I can get my job done in 5 minutes or 10 minutes? And then what happens when AI completely replaces me even needing to be there and starting the system? What if my manager can now replace me with a tool that he can tell it what he needs it to do? And I'm no longer in the loop. I'm not needed. And as I started exploring those questions, it was kind of realized that this is something we need to ask as a society of when technology is so advanced that we can build such amazing things in such a short amount of time. Is that something that should be owned by just a few individuals? Or is this something that should benefit all of society? Because the path we're on right now suggests that there's going to be a handful of people that really benefit from it because they're going to own the robotics. They're going to own the AI technology. They get to charge whatever they want for it. They could choose who they make it available to. Um, and the rest of us who don't own machines, who don't own the AI tooling, we're going to be put in a very difficult situation if we get to that point where I no longer can trade my time. The one resource that I had as part of the working class, I can no longer trade that for money. And that leads the question, then what is my purpose? How am I going to provide for myself? How can I adapt to this new world where the technology just is smarter and faster than I can ever hope to be? Um, and as I was exploring those questions, it led to the writing of this novel, which, by the way, is co-authored with AI. And the reason I wanted to co-author it with AI is because I wanted to explore. Well, there's a lot of like AI slop that's out in the like industry today, right? We see people writing books really quickly, and it's all AI generated, but it's not very good, right? It's actually quite uh, soulless to read. You read it and you're just like, this is very dry. And I want to explore, well, can we use AI to actually make art that's amplifies, that increases our ability to make something that's really powerful and something that really speaks an important message. And as I've worked on this with AI, I've been blown away by just the quality that I've been able to get out of it when I take the time to put quality prompts into it. And I don't just say, write me a book. Like I take time to work with the tool and iterate over a draft again and again until I get something that's just really, really amazing. Um, and so that's really what got me started on this adventure. And it's been now more than ever, I see that it's a message that people need to start being aware of.
Okay, that's a pretty interesting journey. So, moving on, in the novel's opening chapter, the AI system Atomos replaces entire departments with code efficiency. So, from your perspective as a builder, how close is this fictional scenario to our current technical reality? What are the capabilities? What capabilities are we actually seeing today? In today's AI systems.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So whenever I'm talking about AI, because people are like, well, how soon is this going to replace us, right? How soon am I going to need another job? And the answer is we don't know. The thing about this technology is there's a lot of things that uh, we just don't know until it happens. But the way I like to describe it to people is it's a lot like the early days of the internet back in the 90s. I remember as a kid, like I'd go on the internet and the web pages there were so simple, right? It was just a static HTML page and you can like put pictures of cats or there wasn't a whole lot of video like support, like bandwidth just wasn't sufficient enough for that. But we saw these like websites and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I don't know what we could do with this, but it's cool. Um, and yet now we look at the internet and it's needed for almost every aspect of our lives. We, use it for social media. We use it like this podcast we're doing right now. It's all made possible because of that foundation of those early days. And AI is the exact same way. So right now, it's new, it's exciting. We see it has potential, but right now, like, what do we really use it for? Like generating weird images and videos, and like having to make shopping lists, like just basic stuff. And yet the technology is very impressive. And so I think what we're going to see is in the next decade, maybe two, innovators are going to build on top of this platform where they're going to introduce new tools and features that we just never could have wouldn't have been made possible without AI. And so the question becomes, okay, well, how soon is it going to be good enough to replace humans? And I think right now the biggest thing holding back the technology is the fact that a lot of times these models will hallucinate. So, for viewers who are not familiar with that term, they will just make things up, but they'll talk about it as if it's true. And they can usually do it pretty convincingly, where if you don't know, you might just assume that it is true. But that can have really bad consequences, obviously, in a business setting. Um, and so that is kind of the one thing that's keeping us safe for the time being, because until they can figure out how to reduce how much these tools hallucinate and make things up, obviously it's not going to be as useful as a human for a lot of jobs. But if they can reduce that to where they are now more accurate more often than even a human worker, that's when we're in trouble, if we haven't figured out what we're going to do in society with that capability. Um, so to answer your question, it could be I would say probably less than a decade based on my use of the tool, but we could have a crazy thing next year where they come up with a breakthrough and just says, now we have artificial general intelligence. And now I can replace a lot of human workers. Um, but time will tell.
Okay, I'd like to ask another, question from your book. The concept of automationism is central to your book there. So, for our audience of engineers and builders, can you explain it not as a political theory, but as a potential system architecture for a post-work society, and how would it technically function?
Yeah. So, right. So in my novel, I explore a hypothetical alternative economic model to capitalism called automationism. And at a high level, automationism can be described as it's the collective ownership in a society of AI tooling and machinery. And how it works at a high level is you'll have the way I like to describe it in simple terms is it's similar to the concept of mixing a publicly traded company where you buy shares within a company. If most people are familiar with brokerages like Robinhood, where I can go in and yeah, I can buy shares of that company, and if that company pays dividends based on the profits that they generate, I collect a portion of those dividends based on the number of shares that I have. So that's taking that concept of a publicly traded company, um, and we combine that with a local town, like a small area, where I, as a local member of that community, am also a shareholder of the local industry. But all the industry, all the labor is managed by artificial intelligence. Okay. And so the AI does the work. It generates the profits from that work through that industry, whether it's agricultural, manufacturing, whatever it is. The community generates a service or a resource. They get paid for that. And then the profits from that are distributed to all the members of that community, which, by the way, the term for that is a cell. So you have a cell, which is a group of people that share ownership over an AI run industry, and they collect the money from that. And that's how they make their living. They don't have to work. They're not displaced by AI, right? Because alternatively, right, with capitalism, um, only the owner of the resource or the company that's using AI is going to benefit from the profits generated by the AI. All the workers that were trading their time for money are now left out of the loop, and they have no way to provide for themselves. Right. So we have to consider an alternative to that. That's obviously not going to be good for many people once we get to that point. Um, and so, yes, with automationism, we can explore this alternative where I now, instead of trading my time for money, I own part of a resource that's generating income. And so it's a form of passive income. And I'm collecting that, those dividends in order to provide for myself, even though I no longer have to work. Yeah, so at a high level, that's the concept that I explore in the novel.
That was a really interesting, response you gave there. So, chose to co-write this book with AI. So, what was your collaborative workflow like, and how did you maintain your creative voice and ensure the final story had a soul, avoiding what you call AI slop?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So it started off, obviously, I mean, this is so new. Originally, my thought was I was going to write all the dialogue for the human characters in the novel. And then I was going to have the AI write the responses. Obviously, there's a lot of AI, there's a lot of robotics, a lot of characters in the novel. And so I started off with this workflow where I would write some dialogue. And then I would tell it, give me a natural response to me, this dialogue. And we'd have it back and forth. And which was really cool because it ends up with a really natural flowing conversation. A lot of the readers that have my beta readers commented on, like, it just feels so natural. And that's because it wasn't me just like coming up with what direction it's going to go. It was a very like natural, here's some thoughts I have, then it would respond and we go back and forth. So that's how it started. And I got through several drafts of it, just doing that. But then I wanted to explore, okay, um, how well does it write prose? Like the describing a scene or describing the emotional state of a character. And so I would prompt it. Some of these prompts, they were longer than the text itself that would end up being generated. But it almost, I guess a good way to describe it is I became almost like a director of a film rather than the actor, right? The actual writer. And I was guiding the AI with these very detailed prompts. And it felt, yeah, very much like a director would. I'm setting the scene, I'm setting the motivations of the characters, why they're trying to do what they're doing, what they're hoping to accomplish, and where the story's going to go. And as I was able to do that, it took that and it ran with it. And man, some of the stuff it generated just like I would read it and just be like, man, that's so powerful. And so, yeah, I've been very pleased with how the technology is able to adapt based on what we give it. And I've learned that AI is a lot like a mirror. It reflects back our thoughts and our intentions at us. Whatever we put into it, it amplifies it and it enhances it, which I think can be really encouraging for us in society if we use it for the right things. We can make really amazing tools with this. But it starts with how we want to use it. So
Okay, that's fantastic. So, in your book, the protagonist represents a highly skilled professional who becomes economically obsolete. So, for the engineers and tech workers listening, what is the most practical piece of advice you have for future-proofing their careers, not just their technical skills?
yeah, that's a really good question. And I've thought about this myself too, right? I'm a software engineer. So I thought a lot about what am I going to do if the company I'm working at, the tool gets good enough that I just now become another expense for the company and they're going to weigh, they don't, I mean, depending on the company you work for, they're not weighing the human experience. They're weighing the bottom line, which is how much am I going to save if I cut these human workers out and replace them with AI? And that's definitely a concern I share. And the answer that I've come to personally is a lot of us are going to have to learn how to be entrepreneurs, and we're going to have to learn how to use these tools to find a niche in the market that is not being filled by other companies. Because what's going to happen is when the tools get that good that you can replace human workers, now I, as an individual engineer, um, depending on what kind of work I'm doing, but I could potentially also have access to hundreds of workers. And I can build something, I can create something that normally would not be possible for one individual to do on their own. But with leveraging this technology, I can now become an entrepreneur if I have something that I see needs to be filled in the market. I can create a product that now I can provide for myself that way, even if the big tech companies are just, laying people off. Um, and so that would be my general advice is, first of all, make sure you're getting familiar with the tools. If you're still not using AI at this point, um, I just hate to say it, but like that's gonna make you obsolete more than anything. If everyone around you, like on your team, is using these tools and they're more productive than you, and then it comes time to figure out like, okay, we got to cut costs. It's like, well, so and so, they're doing everything by hand still. It takes them 10 times longer to get a job done than all the rest of the team. It's gonna put you in a not the greatest light. And so get familiar with the tools, get comfortable using them, because it's not going away and it's going to get better. One thing I hear from a lot of engineers is like, it just makes so many mistakes. And I think that was true in the first and the second year when ChatGPT was coming out. I don't think that's so true anymore, compared to like now I can get quite a bit done. It still does make mistakes, but they're a lot smaller than they used to be. And a lot of it depends on your quality of your prompts. And so get used to using the tool and get good at writing good prompts, would be my advice initially. And then long term, consider the possibility that you're going to have to be your own boss, um, if you can't find work through other conventional means like we're used to. But yeah, that's my two pieces there.
Okay, so what has been the most surprising or challenging reaction you've received from fellow technologists about the future you depict in your book?
Yeah, a lot of people. So one of the challenges they say is like, well, people just aren't going to be able to share like you're suggesting, right? Because one of the facets of automationism is you have to be willing to be co-owners with others, and share resources. Um, and whether it's biological or it's cultural, humanity struggles with this. I'm not going to, you know, try to ignore that. Obviously, we are conditioned to be like, what's mine is mine. I've worked for it, and I don't want to share it. And that's totally understandable. But I think we are going to have to challenge that narrative that people can't collaborate at scale, because it may be forced upon us where if we're not able to trade our time for money, and the only alternative is to be owners, share ownership of something, we either learn to work together, and again, this is more applicable for the working class who don't have, you don't have retirement like saved up. You still like have to provide for yourself. And if there's no work, um, through conventional means, we're going to have to figure out a way to collaborate. And that could be a real struggle for people. And I don't know how that's going to play out. But I do have hope that humanity, has the capacity to share and to cooperate together. It's just going to take a little bit of a like a shift in our mindset. That's probably the biggest thing I hear from people, and I don't disagree. But the alternative is, if we can figure that out, and learn to use money not as like a the problem with money today is not only is it used to trade resources, it's also really used as a status symbol, right? We see people that they attach their self worth and like how important they feel based on like how much is in their bank account. And that's a cultural thing, right? There's no like money is just a tool that people use to trade resources in an economic sense. And I think we're going to have to get back to that, and learn to use it in that manner, um, so that we can cooperate together, to pull something off like automationism. But again, there's no technical barriers preventing us from doing so. It really is just a cultural thing. So that'll be interesting to see, how that plays out. But yeah.
Okay, that was a really wonderful response there. So I'd like to ask Landon, for the innovators and founders listening, what's one concrete way they can design their products or companies today to better distribute the benefits of automation rather than concentrate them?
Yeah. I think the first thing is going in with the mindset that we want, well, we got to ask ourselves, what do we want to do with this technology? Do we want it to just generate a lot of money? Like, is that our end goal? That's capitalism's end goal, right? It's all centered around the idea that society is supposedly better if everyone is just trying to generate capital because that breeds competition, which makes better products. No disagreements there, but can we imagine an alternative future where the end goal is not the generation of capital, but the generation of quality of life for individuals, and society? Because one of the downsides with capitalism is, it doesn't really have incentives for collective well-being, um, right? Because the end goal is I, as an individual, I just need to generate money, um, and I benefit myself, and that's really like that's all capitalism has to say on the matter. Now, like you have to provide a product of some kind to get there. You're not unless you just obviously steal from people, but like within the context of society, I have to provide value to get money. But that value isn't always what's best for the collective well-being of humanity, right? We see this in pollution. We see like the byproducts of the things that companies generate has a negative impact on society as a whole. But again, there's no incentive there for the company to try to correct that other than looking good at face value. They can say, oh, look, we have greenhouse credits, like we're reducing our carbon emissions, which a lot of times they're just like passing the buck around somewhere else and it's not actually benefiting us. Um, so I think with innovators and like the next generation that's coming up with how are we going to use this technology, what is your end goal? Or are you in it just to make money? And there's nothing wrong with making money. But can we also imagine using the technology in a way that's going to benefit not just our customers, but also our employees, creating an environment where everybody is just like now reaping the benefits of this technology. Because we can do that. There's nothing preventing us from making that kind of future other than just the leaders and innovators deciding what they're going to do with it.
Okay, that's interesting. So I haven't deeply researched, written about this possible future. What gives you the most hope about humanity's ability to navigate this transition?
Um, yeah, it's really these are really good questions, by the way. I have hope in humanity because although we do see a lot of cause of cases where we take advantage of each other, right? I mean, we hear it in the news all the time. There's also we hopefully most of us have seen examples where humanity is actually quite compassionate and we want to reduce suffering of those around us. I think one of the challenges with us doing so is often we don't know how to do so. Like we see the suffering around us, but we're just like, okay, I'm just one person. Like, what could I do about that? And we see that people will take advantage of those who try to be compassionate, right? They'll ask for money and then they'll use it for purposes other than what, like they said they needed it for. And then also on top of that, maybe we see a need, but we just personally aren't in a position to like change the world in that way for whatever reason. Um, but I think if you ask most people, if they were in a position to help somebody they loved, um, for example, like say you had a family member, they needed some money to cover their rent for that month or whatever it may be. Um, and you know that they were, yeah, just down on their luck. I feel like most of us would have the compassion to try to help where we can. And it's that compassion that gives me hope that if we can lower the barrier of us being kind to one another, whether it's through the sharing of money as needed, right? Like we see crowdsourcing campaigns where somebody has like a death in the family and they need to pay for funeral expenses, and you see a community like come together to like help with that, right? That's a really great example. Someone lowered the barrier of entry. Now people can help each other in a time of need. And I'm really excited if we could use AI to push us towards that end goal, to lower the barrier of entry where money now becomes a tool that we could distribute as we could detect real needs within our local communities and our societies, so that like no one individual is just like sitting on a pile of cash that's just not doing anything. But like, we can invest in infrastructure, we can invest in like all these things that are going to help um, humanity just grow together as a collective. And I really think we could do that through technology. And that gets me excited to see. I know there's a lot of smart people in this world who see those same needs and they want those same things. And so my hope is that we'll work towards that goal. That one day, like it just becomes second nature that If we see somebody suffering, we can identify it and we can address it in ways that we just can't today due to limitations in technology.
Okay, so Landon, part of the theme of this podcast is centered around innovation. So for that reason, there's a common question that I like to ask every guest that we interview on this podcast. So tell us, what does the word innovation truly mean to you, and how does it relate to you in your work, bridging the technical reality of AI with its profound human implications through fiction?
Yeah, I love that. The word innovation to me means not sticking with the status quo. Okay. Because it's very easy for us to just get stuck and be like, this is the way things are. This is the way they've been done. This is the way they'll always be done. Right. That's not innovation. Innovation is challenging the idea that, first of all, anything that's in place today was started by somebody. Right. Nothing has just always been a certain way. Things change all the time. And innovation is the opportunity for us to be a part of that change, to be a part of that history. So that in the future, um, the people that come after us will be like, yeah, well, this is how it's always been. But we'll have been the ones to have started that. And then they get to it'll be their responsibility to now innovate and to build on top of what we contributed. We're all here for a short period of time on this planet. And I think it's really amazing the fact that we do get to be a part of history if we choose to do so. And so innovation is the challenge that we can make things better and we can be a part of that change that we want to see.
Oh wow, that's a really interesting one there. So finally, Landon, for our listeners who have been captivated by this conversation and want to read the story for themselves or want to, learn more about you and your work on fiction and tech generally, where's the best place for them to go find your book or contact you?
Yeah. So the book is available for pre-order right now on Amazon. Again, it's called "We Can Be Perfect: The Paradox of Progress." You could search for it right on Amazon and pull it up. I'm available. I would say any technical professionals that would like to connect, I'm available on LinkedIn. So you could just search for me there. Always love to reach out and connect with other engineers and innovators in the field and see what they're doing with technology. Um, and yeah, that's probably the two best places they can contact me.
Okay, that's great. So, Landon, it's been a really interesting conversation with you, and I'm excited to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Ezekiel. Thanks for inviting me, and this has been a great conversation.